You're listening to Soundside. I'm Libby Dankman. You can learn a lot from TikTok. Everyday people post their experiences as teachers, nurses, or, King County Metro bus drivers.
Bus drivers are weirdos. Think about it. They drive in circles every day, all day, in silence, for years. Years. All they have are their own thoughts.
That's Desiree Andersen, otherwise known as Des in the Park. She posts about the rides, routes, and roads behind her work as a bus driver in Seattle. During her more than 2 years driving, she also went to grad school for social work, and that helped give her extra insight into the job and how to approach it. And she shared those insights. She started posting on TikTok during a break between driving shifts. Her account was popular and some posts garnered hundreds of thousands of views. But Desiree is now shifting gears. This month, she left her job at King County Metro, and we talked about what she's going through in this transitional period. We talked about how she's glad to not have to wake up at 4 a.m. for her shift anymore, how she followed her brother into driving for King County Metro, and I asked her why she thought her videos struck such a chord with audiences.
I think mostly people see us bus drivers as part of the machine. They forget that we're human beings with full lives that exist outside of driving the bus. And I think the biggest shock to them, or the biggest takeaway that I've gained from them, is that they wanted to know that there's a human behind the bus. Because we're all rushing. We're trying to keep our timestamps. We're trying to keep everybody moving. We don't have a whole lot of time to interact, especially with the current partitions. And so I think just putting the humanity behind the operator of the machine was a big deal to people. And me as a small, young woman, I think also was like a juxtaposition in a historically male field.
So you are educating your TikTok followers about what it's like to be a driver and, different circumstances that you're encountering. But then you're also learning while you're driving, I'm assuming, about the Seattle area and about transit. What do you think you have learned about our city from driving the bus?
Well, I have to say, it's all happening simultaneously. It's happening simultaneously with learning about social work and learning about social services in our county, because my timelines were so overlapped. So having that crossover and that lens to look at our county and the things that happen inside of it has been really transformative for me. Because it's one thing to come onto the bus and feel unsafe or uncomfortable and see different situations. You see a lot of suffering. And so having language and a better understanding at the same time of that really helped me. I just have so much more compassion for the people who are the most marginalized in our community. And just understand that the bus is where they have to go. Buses, libraries, other public spaces. There's not a lot of other spaces for them to go. And so it just increased my compassion, I think.
One of the things that stuck with me from your TikTok was when you talked about de-escalation techniques that you use on your bus. So basically, you say hello, you wave, you acknowledge people individually. And you said on TikTok that you want people to imagine what it must feel like for folks who feel invisible. They're made to feel invisible by society. Or imagine being made to feel you're not welcome somewhere that you basically have to be, again, in public when you don't have a home to go to. Do you feel like more parts of our society need those social worker skills that you're talking about, or need a lens to understand that, a social worker training could help them with?
Yes, it is incredibly difficult. There is this myth that there are enough services, there's enough housing, there's enough of everything in our county, and people just don't want it. And that's just factually untrue. It's not true. I have had clients in my social service settings that are on wait lists for years. And I mean long, long years, 5+ years waiting on housing. And they're in impossible situations. I had one client that was homeless for 5 years and in and out of shelters, using services, doing what they're supposed to be doing. It just takes time. And so if there's one takeaway you can take from me today, it's just that It's not as easy to get off the street as one might imagine. And there is a lack of services and there is a lack of help. The state paid for me to get my social work degree because there is a lack of providers in our area. Um, and so even if you want help, there's just wait lists at my clinic where I will be going. Sometimes folks have to wait up to 3 months just to get a provider. Imagine if you're in a mental health crisis, waiting that long. Like it's not easy.
Were there times on your bus when you did feel unsafe, even though you had this training?
I wouldn't say I ever felt like super unsafe, um, just because of probably the times that I drove. There have been incidents on my bus, but I felt equipped to handle them. One incident that happened, I was going across the Ballard Bridge and a customer was spitting on another passenger because they had told them to be quiet. And I had to make a split decision. I can't stop on the bridge. Like, that's just not a safe situation. So I stopped on the other side of the bridge, was able to get them off of the bus, but they were spitting on their way out and kind of cursing. I didn't feel unsafe. I'm sure my passenger did. And I was able to get them to write an incident report, invite other passengers to write an incident report. I wrote one myself, and we handled that as best as we could. And then I saw that regular passenger like every day after that, and they were okay. They continued to ride in transit despite going through this, which I think is really admirable of them.
Wow, even though they experienced that, they stuck with the bus. Yeah.
Yeah, they still rode it every day. Every day on my bus, I'd pick them up. I asked, the next day that I saw them, "Hey, how you doing? You doing okay? Have you heard from Metro? Like, what's going on?" They were fine. They understand that it's part of living in the world that we live in and that things that exist in our community spill over onto transit.
I know that after the murder of Sean Yim, who was the first driver who was killed on duty in 26 years, but it was a really shocking crime. It happened really near the University of Washington, a driver who was murdered in December of last year. The drivers' union has been outspoken about wanting more protections for drivers on buses. And in June, Metro said it was stepping up safety measures. So one of the things was these new, thicker dividers in between drivers and the rest of the bus. What do you think about new safety measures on Metro?
I want to say that this is my personal opinion, first and
Yes.
foremost. And I wonder if I might be a kind of dissenting opinion about this kind of thing. I think that the safety measures that Metro are taking are the options that we have. They're the best options that we have. But I don't think that they're full solutions to the safety issues on board. Adding a partition, sure. But if somebody's truly motivated, they're going to find a way around that partition. One, and I've experienced the partitions. I've got to test them out and vote on them and that whole thing. The other thing is they're a little bit cumbersome. The ones that we currently have are already cumbersome. If you have to get out of the driver's seat to help a disabled passenger, for example, it takes a little bit more time to deal with that shield. And so I imagine the ones that are a little bit more locked and robust are even going to be more cumbersome and slow us down in our jobs. But again, what's the alternative to that? I don't also think that it's great to increase carceral interactions to already vulnerable populations. I'm not sure that that's the right solution long term. Is it what we have right now? I suppose. And again, this is from a lens of somebody with some crisis training, with some social work training, that feels like, okay, if somebody's in distress, which is usually what's happening, they're in distress and they're acting out. I feel like equipped, like I can handle that with my social work skills. And I don't want to say that Metro's not doing those things. They are having classes on de-escalation for drivers. They are having other classes about how to decrease violence in the workplace. So they're kind of trying to tackle it from both lenses. So, I mean, it's what we have, but I don't think it's a long-term solution because I think the problems that exist in our larger community are always going to spill onto the bus. And the problems need to be addressed at the community level, and then they will stop showing up on the bus. But the bus is is a social safety net where people will arrive.
I just couldn't help but think when I was watching your videos and as I listened to you talk, the bus driver is responsible for so much. Like so many parts of our society, you become first responders to the social safety net crisis that we have, right? That there isn't enough services, there aren't enough ways to respond to people. I mean, what about having some kind of outreach on the bus itself, like having roving social workers or something like that? I mean, have you contemplated other solutions that might be useful here?
Absolutely, absolutely. I always like have this like vision for the future of maybe like having some sort of social service crisis team that is transit specific. I do know that they ran a pilot program out of Burien and Aurora transit centers where they had social workers in those spaces, and it decreased the incident reports in those two environments by quite a lot, like a large percentage. But then, that program wasn't widely advertised. Like I found out about it through some grad school research. And I'm not sure the status of that program currently. Is it still running? Is it funded? Was the pilot successful? So I'm wondering what happened to that and can it be expanded? Because I do think that it is a better solution. But again, we have a lack of social services altogether. So you can send someone into a crisis situation to address it, but then what? Then what happens? Where's the cliff after that? Are people getting connected to services that will sustain them long term, or will these incidents reoccur in an ongoing manner periodically as people become just destabilized?
Okay, I want to ask something about buses specifically and their services, a little bit less about, the social safety net situation that we've been discussing so far. This is more along the lines of, okay, if you want your bus to come on time and it doesn't, what is happening? The 8 bus, which you drove, includes Lower Queen Anne, SLU, Capitol Hill, and the Central District. It is sometimes not called the 8 bus. It is called the late bus. One Seattle subreddit from last year, the post was titled, "What's the worst bus and why is it the 8?" So any insight onto why certain bus lines seem to be always chronically late?
Let's use the Route 8 as an example. It has so many barriers. So if you're starting from Queen Anne, you're heading to Mount Baker. The first barrier is any climate pledge traffic. So any event that's happening at the Climate Pledge Arena or in that Seattle Center area is going to slow you down. Then you go on to Denny. Denny's got a lot of single-use passengers, and Denny connects you to I-5. And I guess you can connect to 99 if you really wanted to. So you've got people heading to the freeway, usually in single occupancy vehicles. So you've got a lot of SLU commuters going to the tech companies, using their garages. That's going to add a lot of traffic, especially during peak times. So from there, you go to Capitol Hill. So you've got the freeway traffic trying to get into Capitol Hill, right there going by the 24-hour fitness. So then you get to Capitol Hill. Capitol Hill, lively area. A lot of pedestrians, a lot of street vendors and events that happen there. So anything that might happen there will slow you down. So then you go on to 15th, you go through a tight neighborhood. You have to go slow even if you don't want to. Then you go down to MLK, and you can usually catch up a little bit of time there, but the road conditions are terrible. So it's bumpy. You can't go that fast, and it's a neighborhood. So this speed limit's pretty low. Then anything that might be happening in the Central District might slow you down some more. So then you finally get to 23rd. Again, there's events and things that happen there. And then you make your way to Mount Baker. Once you're trying to get out of Mount Baker, sometimes that whole area can slow you down just because the infrastructure is a little messed up. Just to get out of the station, the light can take 5 minutes to change for you just to get out of the transit center. Then you have to wait still through 2 more lights before you're on your way. And so the lights, the lack of bus lanes, the populations in the area, the pedestrians, the events, all of it. And that's true in most places. If there is an issue with a bus line, it's usually due to single occupancy vehicles and traffic.
It's not the bus's fault, basically. It's too many dang cars on the road and too much congestion. I mean, you had me already at Seattle Center. If that bogs down, then you're screwed, basically. So I think that a lot of people might listen to this and say, boy, that bus, it can be late. There can be, people being loud on the bus. Maybe occasionally you feel like somebody's, invading your personal space or making you feel unsafe. there's no way I want to ride public transit. It's just not worth it. Like, I want to get in that single occupancy vehicle. I mean, what would you say to a person who's thinking that?
Mhm. I think there's this saying going around TikTok and the internet right now, which is the price that you pay for community is inconvenience. And sometimes the bus is a little bit more inconvenient, but it takes away the stress of you having to drive in those single occupancy vehicles in the traffic that I described. Because in theory, you're going a similar route to what the bus is going if you're going to the places where the bus is going. Driving is really stressful. So let transit operators take that off of your shoulders. Parking is expensive, hard to come by. You don't have to worry about it with the transit system. And so in terms of safety, I mean, I've been a passenger on trains and buses in our area. I think I like people watching. I like observing the public. I have felt uncomfortable, but I've rarely felt actually unsafe. And I think there's a distinction between the two. And it's actually my TikTok followers who have helped me to understand that distinction, that there is a difference between feeling unsafe and feeling uncomfortable. And I don't know, just join in. You might enjoy it more than you think you would.
I'm talking with Desiree Andersen, who just left her job as a King County Metro bus driver. And she's a TikTok poster. She's a local influencer on TikTok when it comes to transit issues and explaining the bus from the driver's perspective. So what's next for you, Desiree? We've teased it a little bit, but you're going to be doing social work, doing therapy?
Mm-hmm. I will be a therapist at least for the next 3 years in a community health setting. So that's serving patients who are on Medicare and Medicaid. So we really need those systems in place. There is a wait list for these clients. And so I'm looking forward to serving them. That's what I did for my internship. It was some of the most rewarding work I've ever done in my life.
Can I ask you about compassion fatigue? Because as a bus driver, I think you were exposed to probably some of that. As a therapist, you're going to be exposed to even more, perhaps, especially with the population you're going to serve. How are you going to keep yourself healthy and strong for this kind of work?
I learned my lesson my first year of grad school. I was driving a rapid ride and I was working in crisis. So about 12 hours a day, I was completely consumed by all sorts of crisis in our county. And that was too much. So number one, having boundaries around how much time I spend doing these things. Number two, spending a lot of time educating myself on modalities, on training, on systems that are available in our county. A big part of what burns new clinicians out is a lack of education and a lack of training. And so the more I can do to prepare and be the best version of myself for my clients, like the better off we all will be. And three, just making sure that I take time to step away, that I close the laptop, that I turn off my phone, that I go spend time in nature and with my family and with my community, not thinking about, everything that needs to get done, because there will always be suffering and I'm just one person.
You can follow her at Des in the Park, DES in the Park on TikTok. Okay, so final question. Does your new life include taking the bus? Are you are you going to be on the 8 at all as a passenger from now on?
Yes, I hate driving into Seattle and I live in the suburbs. So you will find me on the Link train heading up there and then using the bus to get throughout the city. Absolutely.
Former King County Metro bus driver, new therapist, and also just a really great voice for public education on all of these interrelated issues. Desiree Andersen, thank you very much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be here.
By the way, we reached out to King County Metro about the pilot program Desiree mentioned. She said it saw lowered numbers of incidents, but she wasn't sure what its status was. Metro told us the behavioral health specialist program is actually returning to Aurora Village this week. Earlier this year, Metro said its outreach team had contacted more than 4,300 people at the Burien Transit Center, including 3,600 peer support interactions, 131 crisis responses, and 403 shelter referrals. Thanks for listening to Soundside. And hey, this show is only possible because listeners support us. If you are able to give right now, check out the show notes for a link to donate. And don't forget, you can listen live on KUOW 94.9 FM Seattle at noon and 8 p.m., Monday through Thursday, or anytime online at KUOW.org.